Hello and welcome to the Joyful Motherhood podcast. I'm Alex DeRose, your host. You are going to have so much fun. You're going to love this podcast because, my goal is to give you encouragement and hope and just inspiration and just to feel like a joyful mom. Leave the podcast and be like, hey, listen, I can do this and you can do this because God chose you to be the mom of your specific kids in these exact stages, in these exact ages, like everything that's happening in your life, God has planned. There's a book, Trustful Surrender to Divine Providence. Oh my gosh. I just read it this past summer and you have to read it. It's so good, but it's just this whole idea of everything happens for a reason. You hear that kind of secular terminology. Well, there's like a deep-rooted Christian truth of that God's divine providence is real, and the way that he's planned out your life, the way that he's ordained things to happen, events in your life, his hand is in that. And we can trust that what's happening in your life, what's happening with your kids, God is in that, and there's divine ordinance and providence, and we don't have to worry and stress ourselves out and be up all night worrying. So we can have faith and we can have trust. So let's get into it. So, okay. If you've been following, thank you so much for following on Instagram, and it's been so much fun there, but I wanted to have a place where we could talk longer and I could share some deeper thoughts and longer thoughts. And so that's where this podcast idea now, oh my gosh, this podcast has been years in the dream works. And part of it was perfectionism holding me back. Part of it was just having babies in mom life and not figuring out how to work things in. But now is the time and we're going to do it. So quick introduction. Okay, let's see. I am 36 years old, a millennial mama. So any other 80s babies, married to my husband, Nick, we're going to be celebrating our 13th anniversary this coming September, which is so awesome. Did I say, okay, so we met on Catholic Match, both cradle Catholics, love our faith so much. And that's the other thing, when you listen to this podcast, everything that I share, I want it to always be from the lens of faith, Christianity, Catholicism, and always from the lens of faith. That's where my joy comes from. That's where all of our joy comes from, is obviously Jesus and God. And so that is going to be the number one. Everything that we talk about will be rooted and come back to the faith. And it's just going to be so much fun. We're going to talk about so many amazing topics. And I really want you to leave feeling encouraged and empowered of right where you are, that, this is what God is calling you to. I love sharing tips. Okay, so I was a nurse practitioner, I'll go through my kind of like work history, but love education, love working. I'm also the oldest of 8 kids, have 5 little brothers, 2 little sisters, love being the oldest, love big families, had honestly a great childhood. My parents were just so awesome. They really were great. Nobody's perfect, but they were just really great about just having a good, space for us at home and just cultivating like family traditions. My mom, I will say, I should dedicate this podcast really to my mom because she is my inspiration. Truly, she's amazing. She is just such an amazing mom. Now, she also was a nurse who then became a stay-at-home mom. So this episode, I just want to do a quick introduction, but I really the tips I'm going to leave you with, I have one of my posts that went viral about a year ago, was 10 mom lessons from a nurse practitioner turned stay-at-home mom. And it's so funny because even when I was changing my handle on Instagram to a stay-at-home mom, like I was even nervous about that. My point is telling you is that this is how much, I don't want to say anxiety, but just how much identity goes into sometimes our motherhood and becoming a stay-at-home mom. And it's really an interesting topic to talk about. It really is, because I've wondered so much too about why I had even struggled with that so much. And so I want to talk about that too. But okay, so long story short, so my mom, when I think about it and how I looked up to her so much, she was a nurse who then became a stay-at-home mom. And so I'm like, yes, that's what I want. And I never thought, when I loved nursing and I was going through my nursing career and education, and then I went back for my master's and loved it, I never really thought, how is this going to work in my family life? I just assumed, I'm going to be working and when I have kids. And so I never was one of those people who was like, I just dream about being home with my kids. And my dreams were always kind of both, like being a nurse and being a mom was always a dream, always, like 100%. And like wanted to get married as young as possible and start having kids, but just never thought of that fully, how that transition was going to work, or how that corporation was going to work. My dad is a lawyer, and so I always saw, the male role model as kind of like the provider. And then once, like I said, my mom coming home, being stay-at-home mom. So I had that amazing example, but I just never thought about it. And so the other thing is, okay, we have to talk about this, but just how much, I definitely do want to say lies, but just how much goes around messaging to young women, especially now, way even more than, myself 15 years ago. But this messaging of moms, you need to do something big with your life that is more than motherhood. And that needs to come second. It's such a big message that is sent to us as women. And feminism is such a big part of that. So I really want to talk a lot about feminism too, because that is such a huge role. And I think it's so important for us to think about these big ideas and articulate them, because it helps us understand our own life and like things that we struggle with. So, but one thing, so backtrack to this big transition of officially becoming a stay-at-home mom. And I also homeschooled from the beginning. And so as I got into this like Catholic homeschooling world, I just found so many moms who like that was their dream as well, but they didn't care about as much or at all about like their quote unquote career. And I always felt like a little bit, I always felt like disconnected from that, why I was so curious as to how are these women like, and I remember I would just straight up ask them, being the extrovert that I am, I just be like, do you miss your career? Like, are you okay with staying home with your kids? Like what, like, don't you want to work? Or I was so confused by it. And so anyway, I just want to say too that, God has different plans for everybody. There's different saints. There's different, okay, Saint Gianna, I'm going to go through the wall and show you all these things, but Saint Gianna was a physician. There's no right or wrong in all of this. It's your journey and your journey. So I want to share my journey to help make sense of yours too. And if there's things that you can learn from mine, that is the goal. That is the goal, to learn from each other. Because at the end of the day, working moms, stay-at-home moms, all of these things, at the end of the day, you are a mom. And even Nick, my husband, would always say, I would talk about all these titles all the time. He's like, just say mom, like you're a mom. And why does it have to be working mom, stay-at-home mom? Why does it have to be all these terms? And I actually love that he says that. I love the common sense of that. Like, yes, we're moms. So we're going to talk about mom life. So I'm going to tell you about my transition to being a stay-at-home mom. And a lot of the things I talk about will relate to things like that. But same thing that I kind of think with homeschooling is that even when I was deep into this homeschooling world, I would always tell my own mom, be like, Mom, you homeschooled us, because what did we learn at school? At things that I remember. So, I mean, yes, there are some great teachers, especially in the older years, but so much of what we learn, everybody knows this, like home is the heart of everything. That's where we learn the most. And, my mom always had the home library in the basement and all these things that's where we learn. So part of me just with this whole homeschooling experience almost thinks that every mom is a homeschool mom, that you're building up your domestic church at home. You're building up your kids. You're teaching your kids at home. So welcome all moms. Let's just get that out of the air, clear the air that this is a podcast for all moms. So like I said, I'm going to be talking a lot about stay-at-home motherhood because that's where I am right now. And that's where my heart is. And my heart is specifically to talk about in this episode too, making that transition, because that discernment process for me of deciding to leave becoming a nurse and embrace this season, which is also a big thing that I want you to really think about, is the word season. Think about your mom life as think of your mom life as almost like a school, okay? And when you were in high school, when you're in middle school, and then high school, and then college, and you have these different years that are packed in, it's almost like this in motherhood, where you have early years of motherhood, middle years of motherhood, and then later years. And, think of those 18 years, and then you have, the college years and marriage and young adult years. And, because we never stop being a mom. And so you kind of think about it in those terms of that, this is a season, and your motherhood is going to look so different when you're in these little years, and when you're raising your kids too. This is a season of raising your kids. So what are the decisions you're going to make in the season of raising your kids? And I love that. That has helped me so much of thinking, okay, this is my season. And it's helped me so much to see other moms who have said, well, I stayed home in the season. I've stayed home to raise my kids, and then I went back. And that is always an option. That is something we need to always remember and think about too. And actually one of my podcasts that I love was Cameron Candace Burr, and I just listened to an episode where she was talking about that, and she said, well, I stayed home for 10 years, and when Val her husband was working, and she's like, in those years, that was when I started reading the Bible every day. And that was when I grew in my faith and grew so much closer to God. And I mean, look at her now. She's, almost probably 20 years older than me now. And or 10 years, and she's doing all these things in her career. There are years, there are decades, there are seasons. So Ecclesiastics, that there's a season for everything. That's something I really try to think about. And it's really helpful to hear other moms say that, to say, well, this is the season of raising babies. So think about the season you're in. All right, let's get into these tips. I want you to be able to, my nurse brain loves lists and loves this. And so making things and making lists and making like tangible tips that you can say, okay, I remember her saying that I can do that. That is something that is so fun and practical to share as moms. Love that. Mom tips and mom hacks. Okay, so let's see. So one of my favorite quotes also, and we talk about the job of being a mom. Another thing I really want you to think about is this word irreplaceable, because you are irreplaceable as a mom, okay? You gave birth to your baby, or if you've adopted your baby, or however this is your child, that you are the mom. If you go by the name mom, that's you. Like, you are irreplaceable. And every other role that we play, like, God does call us to these other things in life, absolutely. But especially with different kind of jobs, that's always going to be there. You can always come back to that. I don't want to say it can be replaceable, but think about that. Just think about how it's irreplaceable as a mom. So here's an amazing quote. I loved this quote when I found this. First of all, I always love quotes. So I'll always have a good quote for you that you can save. Okay, this is by C.S. Lewis. And I think I have used this in so many of my posts because I've just loved it so much. Children are not a distraction from the most important work. They are the most important work. Oh my gosh, I loved that quote so much, because so much of the tension between being a mom and having these other dreams and working and transition to stay-at-home mom, it's like thinking that, well, the kids are in the way. And also the culture of death and the pro choice, I think, like movements of just that, you have to put children on hold, or you have to get rid of children, or God forbid you have to abort children. All of just the negativity around having kids is that they are competing with our top dreams in life, and their distraction, and what a lie that is. Of course, we know that that's a lie, but this quote just articulates it so well. And I think just brings so much joy to that children are not a distraction from they are the most important work. And I mean, think about this, this is not a morbid thought. I mean, it is true. The saints always tell us, have like a skull around to think about, okay, we're not living for this world. We're living for the next world. We are living for the next world. So this is not a morbid thought, but just think about like people that are on their deathbeds. It's so true, and and you interview them, and what do they regret the most, or what do they say the most? I don't want to say regret. What does somebody on their deathbed will tell you? All of these other things don't matter. Like, they will tell you their family is the most important thing, their relationships, the people that they spent time with the most, raising their kids, being the matriarch of your family. So perspective, we need that perspective. We need to like think about that every single day, honestly. And you know what? Maybe we should have like a skull on our desk and just remember that. But the cross, I have so many crucifixes everywhere around. It's just reminding ourselves of that. So of the immortality of that, where we're pouring our time, what's the most important thing? So, our kid, like our family, that's the most important work. So now we're going to get into what we can do. Okay. So this is these lessons. Other thing I want you to think about what your education was, what your background was, what your dreams were, loves were, everything before you became a mom. And then this is so amazing, thinking about all the ways that now you are using that being a mom. It's amazing. God is literally preparing you for all of these things in your motherhood. Okay, so here's the first lesson. And then this is, I think, especially for the younger years, okay? And especially for being a stay-at-home mom. Okay, this is going to be the 10 lessons. Okay, number 1, shower every day, okay? Here's what I said. When I worked as a nurse, I would shower and get dressed for my job. When I became a stay-at-home mom, I didn't have a uniform. I didn't have a place to go. So why would I get ready Well, I learned. Now I proudly dress and shower every day for motherhood. But it's so true. And I remember just like being embarrassed to go out of the house. Like I remember being like, I don't want to be seen at like the grocery store at 10 o'clock in the morning because people are going to be like, well, what are you doing? Why aren't you at work? It's so ridiculous to me now that I'm on the other side, and I can see with such clear eyes the importance and the value of being a mom. But I want to like meet you there if you are there, or if you know friends that are there, you can be reminded to encourage them, to encourage a new mom. But it is so funny because a lot of times in this whole athleisure wear, culture vibe that we're in, and just the whole fashion we'll talk about, but it's tricky to figure out, and you're kind of like. And I remember seeing moms at like play dates and different things. I remember seeing them and like dressed so well, and then they were stay-at-home mom, and I could not figure it out. I'm like, who is she dressing up for? I didn't understand, like, where's she getting that confidence from or motivation from? And it's just such a beautiful thing. I'll never forget the first time where I literally just in the middle of the day, I think it was still the afternoon. Here's the thing too. It doesn't have to be the morning. Okay. You can save your day. You're having a bad morning at home. The day is not over. You can save the day. Even by 4 p.m. you can change your day around. Okay. And I remember the first time that I showered and like put on this, lipstick and like really nice dress for going nowhere. And I just remember, and this was years before I had Instagram, by the way. And I remember just, oh my gosh, like this is so much fun. And this is amazing. And also I can choose this. Like nobody's telling me what to do. I can make this decision, And yes, and it really does change so much because this is the other beauty of Catholicism, the theology of the body. Like we value our body and we know that we are body and soul. So it is very true what we put on our body matters, and the way that we and taking care of our skin and our hair and taking a shower. And it, first of all, I mean, everybody knows this. It boosts your self a confidence when you feel clean and when you feel like you're put together. It really does. And so that is something. So you could try to incorporate it into your day, and even postpartum, trying to shower every day. So mom uniform, pick out a mom uniform, and you could start with, okay, maybe you do just like get a pair of yoga pants that you like, and then you start wearing cute shirts, and if you can find like cute halters or starting to get into dresses, it's so much fun, and you can kind of call it your own mom uniform. So number 2, oh my gosh, this I love. Okay. Breaking the day into mom shifts. This blew my mind. Okay. So I said, as nurses, we worked in 4-hour blocks. This is so helpful in motherhood, mentally breaking up tasks into saying 7 a.m. to 7 to 11. That's your morning shift. Okay. 11 to 3, like your day shift, 3 to 7, your evening shift, and then 7 to 11, your night shift. And I love this. Oh my gosh, this is like my favorite, one of my favorite tips ever, because you kind of it's easier to condense and figure out, okay, what is going to happen in that shift, who, like breakfast shift, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, like your meal shifts, and then, what's going to happen in those shifts, and who's going to, when you're going to get relief, which we'll talk about that too with breaks, but when you're going to get, just what's going to happen in those shifts. So I think I'll have to have a separate episode where we talk about the shifts, but breaking your day into a shift, and remembering that like we're human, we work with the way that our brains work is by having, which, especially being Americans, but having, a goal and having like structure, having some kind of structure. And so it just it's truly very, very valuable. Okay. So, and then getting into number 3 is using the 15-minute shift. This is a game changer. There's so much research out there on the 15-minute shift. I mean, like high achieving business people will talk about this, where they'll set a timer and they'll work hard for 15 minutes and on something, focus, and then they'll change gears and focus. But when you are at home, you set that timer for 15 minutes and you say, okay, you know what? For 15 minutes, I'm cleaning the kitchen, I'm mopping the floor, and then I'm going to go check my phone in the other room for 5 minutes, or like what's going to be your reward? Okay, for 15 minutes, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to read with my son. Because we all like, oh, I didn't even like sit down and enjoy him at all because I'm so busy and distracted with other things, which happens. So we have to just say, okay, you know what? I'm going to set this timer for 15 minutes and do that thing that I really wanted to do, and use that motivation, use that, and it builds. And then you can add the next 15 minutes. When we were nurses, we would have like a 15-minute assessment shift. And so, yeah, that's exactly where I got this. Okay. Number 4, delegate. Delegate. Oh my gosh. Okay. So when we were as nurses, it was like we were the point person, and we would say, okay, what are first, we had our nurses' aides, and we would delegate things to the nurses' aides, or hopefully we had them, right? And then we would call the nutritionist for this, and we're kind of like the point person of center of care. The families and the patients would come to us and be like, can you call this doctor for this, and the social worker, and so we were like the point person. So this is so relatable to motherhood. Like, you are their spiritual director. You are their, coach. You are their mentor. You are their mom. You're their heart, And so all of these things, but here's the thing. We are those things, but we cannot do it all. And that's true. It is very true. Like, we're not meant to do it all. And so finding the things that we can delegate out. Now, how it looks practically, like, obviously that this could be thing that there's finances involved in. Maybe there could be finances involved in, maybe it's like we're delegating a house cleaner once a month, which another thing I need to talk about, because it was like this hidden thing that like stay-at-home moms have, had a house cleaner. And I'm like, that's our job. Like, if you're a stay-at-home mom, it's kind of like, that's your job to keep the house. Why would I spend money on that? But hey, listen, we can't do everything. So do not feel bad if that has happened, or that you can do that. You can fit that into the budget. Oh my gosh, that's amazing, because like I said, we can't do it all. So figuring out what is something that we can delegate. There's different, obviously all the different avenues, schooling, homemaking, even cooking. Like, if your husband likes to cook more, like, are you delegating certain meals or nights that he's on for cooking, or things like that? But just relieving the pressure that you're still this point person, but what are the things that you can delegate out? And for the kids with chores too. Oh my gosh, let's talk about that. What are some of the chores that you can delegate out for the kids too? I love that. Okay. 5 was creating kids' care plans. Basically, we would have care plans for our patients, right? Like goals for them, assessments, what things are happening. And this is especially if you have multiple kids, but, any kids, even if you have an only child and you're thinking and you're, sometimes getting overwhelmed with all of these things that you want to do for your kid. A care plan, it's just the idea of, okay, here, how did it work like this? Okay. So the idea, you can do this a million ways, but it's like, what helped me the most was making this motherhood journal, and it kind of turned into my own mini care plan in a way. But even just having something where you're writing out on a piece of paper, or you're writing something out where you're like, these are things that these are things that I'm maybe worried about or concerned about, like a problem. So we would have for a care plan, we would have like the problem. Okay. So, cough. Okay. So what are we going to do for the cough? Right. So the care plan. Okay. So, his school thing, or, fighting with the siblings, or something that you're worried about, or, anything. And then what are the action steps that you want to do as a mom? Pray, offer it up to God. What's a novena you're going to start, but real. And then what are some actions? And it's just so helpful, because instead of just like wallowing in worry, we have an action. So the care plan is so helpful because it helps us create a prayer and then an action for the kids. Now some of these are, so number 6 is making eye contact. So the eyes are the window of the soul. I said, as nurses, we were taught this like therapeutic communication, that it began with eye contact. So when you're going into a patient's room, we would say, look at the person, look at them in their eyes. And sometimes we're so busy as moms, and it's like, do we remember to look in their eyes? And I say this like I think about this all the time too, especially with our generation of our phones. And, it is so sad when you walk into like a store, waiting room a lot of times, and we're all just looking at our phones, and people aren't making eye contact anymore. And we need to lift up from the screens, especially with our kids, especially with them. Oh my gosh, think about what they're going to face with this generation, but we need to make eye contact with them, and remember that. So you can really write that down. And honestly, it brings you so much peace. Like when you sometimes too, even if it's like in the middle of a tantrum, or, some kind of tension, when you just look into somebody's eyes, there is something so peaceful, and that happens. So that's a huge one. Okay. Number 7, create a morning and a prayer routine. Okay. Don't hate me for saying this, because I know it's like an overused hack. Everyone's like, oh, you have to create a morning routine, but it's so true. Like, think about, there was checklists, and there was things that we had before each nursing shift that we had to kind of put in order. Okay. I've had to learn this of what are things that I can in my own motherhood, like, this is going to change too. Go back to seasons this is going to change, but what are things like, and even if you're not a morning person, okay, you can become a morning person. You can. I'm a morning person, so I've always loved the morning, so it might be easier to me, okay? But, and I'm not a night person, I'll say that. I can struggle at night, and that's when the temptations can come. But, and usually I will say this too, it kind of goes the opposite. So if you are a night person, and you have trouble in the morning. So we can all help each other out, okay? But the morning is so important. Like, start back with a 15-minute shift. What is something that you can do, for 15 minutes before you see your kids? Like, is there something is there a way that you can put your rosary on your bedside table and just grab your rosary, even if you get a decade in, before you grab your phone? Is there a way that you can create ideally you could create a prayer routine where there's some kind of morning offering or journaling? Like, I'm a huge journaler, but is there a way that you can journal a page of what you pray to God, make your own morning offering, make your own prayer? Exercise is amazing if you can make that part of your morning routine, but thinking of something, and start small. If you don't have a routine yet, start like very small and just do 15 minutes. If you can make it 30 minutes, if you can tag team with your husband and say, hey, listen, like, can I, go to the gym before you go to work? Or can I, stop in adoration? Is there a way? But creating that idea and plan, because when you think of motherhood as a job, it is so helpful. It really is so helpful. And not to say that we're not going to confuse like a job with a vocation, because yes, it's our vocation. So it's much more than a job. We know that, but this is just practically to help us. And it's okay. It's okay to do that. So it's practically to help us as moms. And the morning routine is huge. The prayer routine is so big, and that comes with time, but it comes with ordinance of the day. And so, something I love that I started doing was praying the noon Angelus with the boys, and it literally takes like maybe less than 5 minutes, but just the predictability of knowing that, okay, at 12 o'clock, someone's going to ring the bell and we're going to pray the Angelus, or having that structure. So having that turning to God of the time. So like as a mom, 9 p.m., is there some kind of like quick night prayer that you can make? But we all know how true it is that you cannot pour from an empty cup. So we really need to have time for prayer for ourselves as moms. If we don't, it's so hard to fill that cup. Now, if you're in a season where the baby's up at night and you're nursing and all these things, God gives us so much grace for that season. But also don't think that there's still ways that you can also pray. And the whole holding the rosary while you're breastfeeding. Oh my gosh, that is great. I've been there so many times. Okay, so let's see. Okay, 8, 9, and 10 are great. I love. Okay, so let's go to, oh no, where did I pull it up? Okay, so 8. Okay, so this, okay, I said read and research. Okay, I said, okay, think about this. Okay, as nurses or as in your job, we had to be informed of like the most up-to-date scientific research. We had to study, we had to prepare for our patients. So how can I do that in motherhood? Like, am I studying other Christian families that I want to emulate? Am I studying other moms? Am I, reading about like what worked for them? What can I learn from them? How can I apply their lessons as a modern Christian mom? So like, I love books and book lists. I'm going to have so many good book lists on my blog, and I'm going to link them on my LTK and all of that you can shop around and look through book lists. But find things that you like. And even if there's, a mom at church that you see and you're like, oh man, like I would love to just get to know her, or like, what is she doing? Or how is she doing? Like we ask her, like go up and just kind of be friends with her, or, says the extrovert. But truly, it is so important to not feel isolated. It is so important to not feel isolated, and it's important to when we're really doubting ourselves, we need to ask questions. We need to ask questions, especially like I said, in those early years. Ask questions and guide. And God gave you the specific intuition and determination for your motherhood, but going out and asking questions, it's only going to help. It's only going to help. And I did that so many times, and it was just so helpful. And then you can weed out. Okay. And this is also why I love podcasts, like find moms that you like. Like, I hope this podcast does this for you, like let me share with you things that God has done that can help you too. And find other moms that you like, even on Instagram, like tailor your feed to moms and ideas of things that you want to learn from, and just learn from them. It's not comparing yourself. It's just saying, okay, you are the mom, and how can you learn from that too? And then 9 and 10, okay, so supporting your husband's role in the family and owning your own. So this is such a big part of motherhood, of course, marriage, and okay, let's see. That God wastes nothing, less in education. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And there's so much tension that can happen when you're figuring out both of your roles. When you're adding kids and you're having young kids and you're raising kids, you're constantly reevaluating what are both of your roles and how does that work? And then owning your role, that you are the mom. This is you are the mom, and you are an amazing mom. And I'm just so proud of you. So thank you so much for listening. I hope some of these tips were amazing. I'm so grateful that you're here. So one of the things, with starting out on a podcast is just reviews and ratings. It just really helps keep the podcast going and getting it out there as you're starting. So if you would leave me a review and a rating, that would be amazing. And if you could share this podcast with somebody you think another mom that might benefit from it, that would be awesome. And let me know what else you want to hear. I have so many great episodes that are going to be coming out. So let me know what you want to hear, what you want an episode for. I'll put it together, whip it up, we'll get it out. And and I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you on your motherhood journey so much, and I'm cheering you on every step of the way. So I want to share before we wrap it up, my very first sponsor that I'm so excited about is Immaculata Blessed, who sponsored this miraculous medal that I have not taken off since I've gotten it. It's my favorite miraculous medal to date. It is tarnish free, 18 karat gold over brass. It's beautiful, beautiful. Her entire website, everything that she sells there. So the code Alex works for 20% off, I believe, and free shipping, which is so generous. And so check it out. Anything that you want to get. I'm a huge fan of wearing a miraculous medal. I've always worn one. So many graces that come from that. So another podcast episode on that to be coming soon. So thank you again. Stay tuned. And I'm praying for you just in your journey as a mom, as a joyful motherhood, that we can just stick together as moms and cheer each other on. And choosing joy is so possible. So God bless you. And I cannot wait to see you again next week. Okay. Thanks so much again.